Well, good morning, everyone. I just wanted to welcome you to the call. This is a weekly call that we do with the Corona Chamber. Advocacy is a huge, huge part of our um, focus and attention. We know that it's often said that if you are not at the table when it's dealing with anything legislative wise, oftentimes you could be on the menu. And by that, it means that sometimes or most of the time there are legislation practices that impact businesses. So our focus is to bring you as much information as possible in a very condensed time. Our chair for our advocacy outreach is a former elected state assembly member. He served here locally. He is from Corona, and he did a stellar job working with everyone up in the legislation. And he is very business friendly, and he understands, because he's a small business owner as well, he knows what each of you and your companies are going through on a daily basis of how to make payroll, how to pay the different bills. And every time the state or a region or a local agency jumps in to start to mess with things, Jeff Miller is right on top of things. He works hand in hand with our advocacy individual who will be introduced later on, but that is Jeff Gibson. So I just refer to them as the Jeffs. And we're very fortunate because Jeff Miller also was on our city council, served as mayor. And like I said, he understands how to get things done. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our chair for today, not just for today, but today, welcome him, Jeff Miller.
Bobby, can I just be the chair for today?
That is, I knew that was going to come out, and no, that's not.
You won't release me.
Correct.
Okay.
4 more years. I think there's a chance of 4 more years or something like that.
God willing. Good morning, everybody. As Bobby indicated, I'm the chair of the Legislative Action Committee. It's an honor to be able to do this for the chamber. I enjoy doing it and sharing with you our infinite wisdom on wonderful legislation that's moving through the system, good, bad, or indifferent. Today's sponsor is Jim Dorsey Photography. There he is right there. For over 30 years, Jim has photographed in the Inland Empire and has continued to do what other photographers don't want to do. He offers unlimited time, unlimited image packages for fair and affordable pricing. He encourages you to call everyone else and then call him. Thank you, Jim Dorsey, for sponsoring our meeting. And with that, before we get into the meat of the matter, as always, I always like to just have everybody continue to lift up the folks in Ukraine and their prayers and thoughts. And hopefully we can get a resolution to this sooner than later. I am going to go off agenda a little bit. Jeff Gibson does have to get off the call a little early. So I'm actually going to put him on first. And then Stephanie will hand it over to you to start the announcements. So with that, there's a little chat button on the bottom. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. We'll do our best to answer. And Jeff Gibson owns Occidental Communications Group. He's the consultant for the chamber. And Jeff has expertise in many political areas, whether it's political campaigns, whether it's government relations. He has a tremendous amount of knowledge in areas of housing and transportation, environmental, and we're honored to have him give a quick update on some bills. I think you're going to be interested in the bills that he's going to be discussing today. And take it away, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Assemblyman Miller. Excuse me, Assembly member. Retired. we are looking at two bills today. Today is a very busy meeting schedule for the legislature. We are on top of and actually one day past the deadline for policy committees. And as we've talked about in the past, and many of you already know, there are two types of committees that both houses have. They have a policy committee and a fiscal committee. So if any bill has a fiscal impact of more than 50 cents on the state of California, it has to go through at least two committees. Many of the bills that we look at have to go through many different policy committees. One of the bills that we have been tracking very closely, AB 2840, was actually, and this is one of the first times I've seen this, was relieved of its policy committee requirements and passed on to the Appropriations Committee by by the Assembly leadership because it was running behind on its committee hearing schedule. So with that, just the quick news at 2840, which you may remember, dealt with essentially a growth moratorium on any new distribution centers in the state of California. So on the day that Amazon is listed now as the largest retailer in the world, ahead of Walmart, and on a day in which the Port of Los Angeles announces that next month it will actually process close to 1 million containers, we had a state assembly bill under consideration to largely eliminate the ability of distribution centers to be placed anywhere in the state of California. So how we square that circle is going to be something that we are actually working closely with labor unions, because 80% of the people that work in distribution centers are unionized, and those unions are up in arms about that. So it shows when we say that we have a bipartisan response to things. The bills that we're going to be bringing to you today also have a high level of bipartisan angst and interest, and so let's get into those. SB 1044 by Assemblymember Durazo, Democrat, or excuse me, Senator Durazo, senator from Los Angeles, deals with employee availability. What we largely know now, because we've all experienced it, but what we usually up until March of 2020 overlooked is that any given time, the state of California may have a dozen or more active states of emergency. Those states of emergency could be related to climate change, could be related to local storm issues, could be related to a wildfire emergency, and could span. There have been times that all of Riverside County has been under a wildfire emergency, but only Corona, for instance, really was under any sort of evacuation order. What SB 1044 would allow employees of any organization to decide on their own whether it was appropriate for them to continue to show up to work during the state of emergency. And if your employees decided on their own to not show up to work, you could not fire them or replace them. And as I said, when you hear state of emergency, you think in your mind, as a reasonable person living in Realville, that you're talking about imminent danger, something that's imminently dangerous. Well, in reality, what ends up happening is you get a situation where states of emergency can be dealing with major emergencies, but they don't have the urgency that you must close your business immediately, like happened in March 2020. And so this is obviously going to be a gigantic problem if it becomes law. There is a large bipartisan outcry over the consideration here. We have an oppose on the bill, and we are tracking the bill from that perspective. Happy to answer any questions that you may have, but again, the time frame that you could think about is states of emergency often last for months at a time. And you can see almost immediately the challenge that you would have as an employer if somebody called you and said, well, I just found out that we're operating under a state of emergency because of the smoke related to a wildfire 50 miles away. I'm not going to be coming in until that state of emergency is gone. And you would not be able to replace that worker or in any fashion retaliate against them, which in the bill could also mean that if you hired someone to essentially replace that worker, and that worker earned some sort of seniority in front of the worker that left because they've been working for you, and say that you ended up having you were giving additional shifts to the replacement worker, the worker that had left and sat on the sidelines during a state of emergency would then be able to sue your organization for back pay and for retaliatory damages. So it's listed as a job killer by the California Chamber of Commerce, and it's something that we're working on very hard. Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Jeff. We do have one question that came through,
Sure.
and it is, does this bill have a serious chance to pass, or is this just fodder for constituents in an election year?
Sure. No, this has all of the bills that we're bringing to you. So yes, and it seems like there are a number of bills like that. We try very hard to figure out what is somebody trying to run for re-election on, and what is going to what actually has a chance to pass. The reason we're bringing these to you is because this has a great chance of passing, quite frankly. If you looked at AB 2840, which we talked about previously, and for the first 2 weeks that it was out, a lot of people, not specifically on this call, but people that I work with, just in their heads thought this does not have a great chance of passing. As you remember, from the moment it was introduced, I said this is the majority leader. Majority leaders do not introduce legislation accidentally. They do not introduce legislation that cannot pass. They have every lever of state government, and if they wanted to implement this in any way other than legislation, they could easily, you could see Mr. Miller's head nodding, they could easily pass it with a phone call to a government agency. When they introduce that piece of legislation, you pay attention. And so, yes, I completely concur that you would think that this is some sort of election year stunt. Senator DeRosa is largely unopposed in their district, and this is not something. The idea of tough election year runs is not. I know that we are in an area that is seeing some primary races that are tough. May see a general election in the assembly that's tough, and I know Bobby and the chamber are hosting an event in May that is going to be a forum that is highly unusual. There may end up being 7 to 10 races out of 120 seats in the legislature that will make it to November as a contested election. And so when we're seeing these pieces of legislation that seem like, yeah, that would be an election year stunt just to appeal to unions or just to appeal. No, this is a real thing. So, and that's what we're dealing with here. Any other questions, Anthony?
There are no other questions.
Okay, then moving on to
I got
AB
one.
20.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Jeff?
Yeah.
Okay, so those just highlight a couple things here. Those bills that you were talking about that become important to leadership, we refer to those as being speakerized, meaning the speaker has an interest in getting them passed. And as Jeff pointed out, they control all the levers of government, literally, and can get it done.
Yep.
My bill on the 91 freeway way back when would never have gotten out of committee unless I was able to convince the speaker at the time, John Perez, to move it out of committee. And once we did that, it sailed through and the governor signed it. When you were covering this, I just looked up how many emergencies were in California, and I found that in February of this year, the governor ended 12 state of the emergencies in California only. Emergencies related to heat waves, oil spills, wildfires, civil unrest in reaction to the George Floyd murder. And so when you think of state of emergency, it's not necessarily, the San Francisco earthquake or, some big earthquake or tsunami or something, fires. It could be a variety of things that could qualify as a state of emergency. So I just add that in. So I just add that in. Sorry about that. Okay, continue.
No problem. So the next bill, and this is again something that's come back before. We dealt with this last year. It's AB 2011, and this is an opposed position. It would allow it would force cities to recognize essentially an overlay zone on every single retail location that you had in your city that could be then sold and redeveloped with very little local input as partially or in reality or in full as a residential location. And again, this is without input from without the city. If you think of the North Main corridor for Corona, where there was a great deal of public work, we were involved in it. City Council member Tony Daddario talks about it a lot, where a retail location that was dying or underused has been converted, obviously, into a very successful mixed-use project that includes a lot of residential. It redefined that Main Street corridor. And in this case, none of that, if AB 2011 were law, the owner could have done that almost exclusively without any input from the city, other than just looking at what kind of paint colors that you would be getting, some of the design characteristics, but all of the ability would be with the developer. Now, you would think the development industry would be interested in this. You would think labor would be interested in this. Labor is actually split. Right now, in committee, there is a gigantic labor versus labor fight over this bill, specifically, again, because you have labor unions on one side that represent retail workers and construction workers that are looking at this saying, this doesn't, you're actually relieving cities of any of their responsibility. We rely on cities to faithfully and appropriately develop projects. Do not sponsor this piece of, do not allow this piece of legislation out of committee. So it's something that we're working on very hard. I know the city of Corona has been interested in it. I know cities up and down the state of California are interested in it. Because it does turn zoning codes on its head, which were put into place, by the way, over 70 years of legislation requiring cities to do very exclusionary zoning. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jeff. We did get another question in regarding AB 2011. And
Okay.
that is, AB 2011 sounds like an unconstitutional restraint on local governing authority. Is there any way to stop this on constitutional grounds, or at least threaten to block it later on such grounds?
So what we are trying to do is, it's similar, pointing out that there has been 70 years of work on requiring cities to go through, and it's a very strenuous, anybody who has ever gone through any sort of development knows there are almost 1,000 steps. You get cut up your project, you start out with an apple and you end up with an orange, but you're lucky to have any sort of anything on your plate at all. And there are very good policy reasons why a lot of those steps exist. And so, yeah, no, we're looking at every possible way to defeat the bill, not because we don't believe that as good people that you should be able to reuse property, but that cities, and that there's a reason cities and communities exist. And so you can say, no, that doesn't fit our, while a Sears outlet, which went out of business 15 years ago, no longer represents our community, a 17-story apartment tower doesn't represent our community either. And we would like something that fits where we are going as a community. So not to defend or get into, but just to relay that we've lived through this as a community, and that's how that experience would be changing if this were to pass. So yeah, no, we're looking at constitutional grounds and everything that can be looked at.
Thank you, Jeff. There are no further questions.
Okay. And I wanted to run through, because we're, and I don't want to take up much more of your time, but we are well ahead of schedule on planning the Sacramento Summit. It's going to be a very action-packed 3 days. You're going to learn a lot of what's going on. This is an incredibly consequential year in Sacramento. I think you can gauge that. You're going to hear personally from the governor. You're going to hear personally from our elected officials. You're going to meet personally in either a breakfast or a lunch or a dinner with people that are drafting 100% of the budget. So if you have a question on that, we'd be happy to coordinate making sure that your question is answered. We have confirmation for people that are key to the 91 and 15 corridor futures, people that are drafting literally 100% of the budget. And so have a number of different policy experts and energy and elsewhere that we're happy to host. We are only doing that as our chamber. So it is something that's exclusive to our chamber and is something that year in and year out, we get a lot of very positive statements and would be happy to have all of you join us. And Bobby and Anthony and everybody at the chamber who do such a great job have all the information that you need to sign up for that. And that is my update. And if you have any other questions.
Anthony, anything in there?
No further questions.
All right. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, guys.
Great report and very, very informative. Before I hand it off to Stephanie, I just want to thank Peppermint Ridge for being on the call. Thank you, Jim. Like to highlight our nonprofits in town that do such important work for our community, and Peppermint Ridge is definitely one of them. And with that, I'll hand it over to Vice President of Communications Extraordinaire, Stephanie Shapiro.
Thank you, Jeff 1 and Jeff 2. I appreciate all the information shared here today. Just wanted to touch on a few things happening here at the chamber, some new stuff we haven't shared with you yet. May is shaping up to be a very busy and exciting month. So first thing I wanted to tell you about was on Monday, May 9th. This is a co-sponsored event with the City of Corona. We hold it every month. It's called Coffee with an Entrepreneur. It's an entrepreneur sharing their story of how they got to where they are. It's an opportunity for a Q&A and back and forth. So this month we're featuring Larry Townsend, and he is actually he has developed the very first trauma kit that was developed specifically to treat gunshot and stabbing wounds. These are things that are meant for the average person to have at their home or business. So we're very excited to hear from him and learn more about what he has created. So that's free to attend, and you can see that link on your screen now to register. Following that, on May 12th, we are hosting another seminar. This is about Senate Bill 1383, which is about businesses that need to participate in organic waste recycling. We heard it on the call a few months back, talking about composting and the different things that are going to be required for businesses in California. So we're going to go over what that is and how you can get on board with it. So that is also free to attend, and that is on Thursday, May 12th. We'll get you in and out so you can get your workday started just after the early morning. Following that, on the 16th, we have another early morning meeting. This is an active shooter response training. So this is kind of going to go hand in hand with the one happening 1 week prior, although they are completely different. This one is going to be taught by one of our police sergeants here in Corona, and how to respond in a situation should you find yourself needing those tools. So great for really anybody to attend. Also free, but space is limited. So please register if you plan on attending, and make sure you come if you sign up. The last thing I wanted to share with you guys today is about our Twilight Celebration that we have coming up on May 26th. This is an evening out for your staff, for your clients, for your vendors. It's going to be a lot of fun. Great opportunity to make some new business connections. We're gonna have a comedian, a magician, auctions, delicious dinner for everybody. Should be a really great night. We have tickets on sale now, individuals and tables. And we also have an opportunity to promote your business by making a donation to the auction. So if you are interested in any of that, please see me. Or I'm going to turn it over to Tammy now. She can also assist you with this, or Robert, or really anybody here at our chamber. We'd love to see you there and help promote your business and get you some new connections. With that, I will turn it over to Tammy.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We definitely have some great opportunities for sponsorship there at the golf tournament. We also have on May 20th, our Good Morning Corona coming up, where you'll be able to meet several of our candidates that are for the state assembly and have a chance to be able to hear what they have to share and possibly even ask them questions or interview them. So a great opportunity to sponsor or exhibit at both of those events. And of course, we definitely would love to help you promote your business with our business newspaper that we have bi-monthly, or our e-blast that we have every single week. And we have many other things. So definitely get a hold of myself or Robert for any help that you may need. And thank you. And we'll turn it back over to you, Jeff.
Great. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Stephanie. I forgot to put up the slide for our legislators after Jeff's presentation. So if you have any questions or like to call them and register your opinion about any of the bills that we've covered, there's all their contact information for our assembly member and senator. And with that, I think we're going to move on. I do want to get an update from Sam on COVID cases on the hospital. But before that, I'd like to just thank a few folks for joining the call. Board members, Dean Seif. Hi, Dean. Thank you for coming. And past chair, Kim Mabon. Thank you, Kim. Obviously, Linda Pearson and Sam Matani, board members. I'd like to thank Annette Dumont from the Riverside County Office of Education, former mayor and former council member Jason Scott. And I think that's it. So Sam.
Yeah, quick update. So for the last few days, we've been at 0, but we've seen today we have 3 COVID patients. 2 are vaccinated and 1 unvaccinated. So it's up and down. So it's not always at 0, but we're not seeing a major spike or major movement. But we still have it in the community. So please be careful.
Are those ICU cases or?
No ICU. Med-surg patient.
Good. Well, we wish them the best. With that, I would like to get our meeting adjourned. Thank you again to Jim Dorsey Photography for being our sponsor. You can learn more at jdorseyphotography.com. Next week's briefing is May 4th, and invite a friend. And we'll look forward to seeing you next Wednesday at 10 a.m. With that, thank you very much. Meeting is
everyone.
adjourned.
All right.
Thank you, Jeff.